Hello, good evening, good afternoon, good morning from wherever you are logging in. My name is Oresia Nyawade, and I am the head of communication and marketing here at ACES. We are super excited to have each and every one of you joining us for part 2 of our live webinar series. I hope you'll pick something up today. I hope you'll meet someone today, and let's have some fun. All right, a little bit of a background of ACES. ACES has been here for 10 years. This year is our 10th anniversary, and we have been connecting early stage African investors for a decade now. We're super excited to finally have our in-person summit once again since the pandemic. The dates that we've set for that is from November 30th to December 1st of 2023. So please mark your calendars and look out for communication from us. A few of the other exciting events that we have planned for you this year is the in-person events, the meetups. I don't know if some of you have been able to participate in them over the years. So we have 50 planned for all over Africa. Over 14 have signed up already, and 10 planned for international cities. So please, if you're interested in joining us as a meetup host in your local city, kindly do reach out to us. We'd be excited to work with you to bring that dream to life. So finally, today we have an exciting lineup of some investors and entrepreneurs who are big in the African early stage investing ecosystem. They're here to share their personal stories. I'll be introducing them in a while. And also our lovely moderator, Miss Fadilah Tchoumba. A little bit about Fadilah. She is the Secretary General of ABAN and on the advisory board of Enrich in Africa. She also served as the Director for Business and Innovation for the Commonwealth Africa region. And she is the Managing Partner at AMZIL Management Consulting. Fadilah has over 9 years of experience in driving business transformation across Africa through institutional research, business intelligence, and strategy advisory. She's passionate about innovation and sustainability in Africa's entrepreneurial ecosystem and continues to champion cross-border co-investments, capacity building, and policy advocacy as a key catalyst for all the success of early-stage investing in Africa. So we have quite a capable and quite an experienced lady moderating today, so we're super excited for her to be here with us today. So a little bit of our guests. First up is Mr. Axel Peyriere, who is an enthusiastic entrepreneur and angel investor working with startups all around the world. He has worked, mentored, coached, partnered, and invested in over 200 startups around the world. He is especially keen on online marketplaces and emerging frontier markets. A warm welcome to Alex. Our second guest is Mr. Nick Vilelle, who is also an entrepreneur and investor. He has spent the past 20 years supporting entrepreneurs across the African continent. Through his experience, he has had the opportunity to work with and advise hundreds of startups. In addition to supporting other local entrepreneurs, he's founded 2 social enterprises and 3 companies of his own. He is also the founder of NIBAN, which is a network of 100 plus members with 20 investments in 2 years. A warm welcome once again, and over to you, Fadilah.
Good evening, everyone. It is an honor to have you all today. I would like to welcome Axel and Nick on stage now. Well, hi, Nick. Hi, Axel.
Hey, how are
Thank you
you?
for joining us this evening. I'm doing very well, thank you. What about yourself?
Great.
All right. I would like to start off by I would like to ask you both, you and Axel and Nick, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the work that you do as investors?
Sure, I'll go first. Nick Vilelle. I always think of myself as an entrepreneur first, and I think that's where I started from. But over the past 3-4 years, have been spending more time in the investing space. So typically a pretty small ticket investor. So I like to go in very early, pre-seed. And having been an entrepreneur and started a number of companies, it's where I feel like I can add the most value. And then, as mentioned before, was the founder of the Nairobi Business Angel Network.
Thank you, Nick. What about you, Axel?
So same. So I'm an entrepreneur investor. I think it's a good starting point as well, because we know basically the things that the entrepreneurs are going through being entrepreneurs ourselves. I'm French and Australian, but more French obviously with the accent. I'm based out of Dubai right now, and I've been investing in. I've been an entrepreneur for the last 20 years, and I've been investing in startups for the last 15 years, and mostly in emerging market and frontier market, Asia at the beginning, and then Africa for the last 8 years.
Right. It's actually wonderful to hear from both of you mentioning that you are both entrepreneurs and investors. So I'm pretty much interested to know how you got into angel investing and how, and if you do recall the first startup you invested in and how they're performing now. I would like to start with Nick.
Good question. So I guess I started my career in the NGO world, and so I was running programs for different donors, supporting entrepreneurs, et cetera. And so, I'd always seen the challenge of raising your first check, your first capital. So when I had the money to be able to address that and make a small dent, I was excited to be able to start investing. My first investment was in 2009, I believe, or 2010 in Swaziland, or it was Swaziland then, now Eswatini. I invested in a chalk making, I don't even know if you can call it a startup, a small business. That was a complete, I don't want to say failure, but the business is no longer there. And I think I made quite a few of those investments, maybe out of passion for the founders and wanting to support another entrepreneur, and have learned some good lessons from some of those failures.
Oh, thank you, Nick. So, what about you, Axel?
Yeah, I think a bit the same. So I've been an entrepreneur. I've not been working for other companies, at least yet, unfortunately. But and basically, I started with the first, I would say, mistakes of angel investment, which would be investing in friends and family. That's what they call it, friends, family, and fools. So it's very more on sentiments rather than on rationals. So the cousin of your co-founder or a friend of a friend, etc., etc. But I think it's a good start. Definitely the first steps in angel investment, especially 10, 15 years ago, were not the easiest ones. I think now there's a lot of communities, tools, meetups like what we are doing here as well, that are really helpful if you're starting in the angel investing journey. And in terms of how these startups are performing now, I guess same experience as well. Rather small businesses than proper startup, or even the startup. Some of them, or most of them, they closed. But it's just to get a first step into that world. And as Nick said, I think the important part is not only where you arrive, how much you'll make or things like that, but it's also the journey and the people you'll meet. And I think that's the most valuable part, and one of the things I enjoy the most in angel investing in businesses. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Axel, for sharing that with us. Nick, I would like to go back to you a little bit. I would like to ask, can you possibly highlight one key lessons that you have learned throughout your year, and that has helped you grow and succeed as an angel investor today?
Yeah, well, succeed is a loaded word, but I think one of the things that I've learned is invest in people that you enjoy spending time with. If you really don't get along with somebody, even if you think it's a good opportunity, personally, I don't think it's worth it. You're not going to be the best investor for them. They're not going to be the best startup founder for you to spend your time with, because I mean, it really is a relationship. You're going to be on a journey with this person and their company for, many years normally. And so I think there's a lot of value in respecting and enjoying their journey and being part of that. And if you don't like the person, then you probably just shouldn't go on that journey.
So, Nick, by saying that, are you pretty much highlighting the idea that you are investing on people, not necessarily on the idea?
Absolutely. I think at the early stage, it really is 99% the person, the team, because I mean, we all see how often every startup has to pivot. So you could think you're investing in the perfect idea, but the idea is not going to be the same in 1 month or 2 months down the line. So it is the team and the people that make the biggest difference. And also what makes it very enjoyable to be an angel is, I love the fact that I'm, on 10 journeys right now with the 10 startups that I've invested in the past 2 years. And, I get to celebrate with them on the wins, like, mourn the losses, etc. And it's fun doing it with people that you really respect their hustle.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Nick, for sharing that. Axel, what about you? Do you agree with Nick?
Yeah, definitely 100%. So at the end, an idea is worth nothing. At the end of the day, it's all about the execution, and it's all about the people. And these people will be the one executing. So once again, I think if you look at those big startup stories out there, it's all about those people that pivot or didn't have too much ego at some point to be able to pivot and things like that, to change the business, try something else, etc., etc. I don't know why I was thinking this story about Airbnb. You look at how it started at the beginning. It was surfing, trying it out from one or the outfit. It was the best ever. And it was a guy that rented a couch in one of the founders' apartments. So, and now you see where it is. I mean, using it, and even in Africa now, I'm using Airbnb more and more in all countries. At the end of the day, it's all about that, and it's all about, as an angel investor as well, there's a maturity or maturation process as well. So you need to start at some point to understand it. You can read 100 books about angel investing, but at some point, it's like diving or things like that. You need to practice and you need to do it more, etc., etc. So there's a maturation process, definitely.
It's very clear that you both are angel investors, right? But you also have very distinct kind of investment thesis and focusing on different regions on the continent and outside the continent. What I would like to know now is, what is the most exciting startup in your portfolio, and what service or product do they offer?
Sorry, connection was not good at the end. What do you say? Like the service and the...
Okay, I'm just going to repeat the question. What I would like to know is that what is the most exciting startup in your portfolio, and what service or product do they offer?
I think it depends on a lot of things. Huh? So once again, I think success and is not something very specific. And your success, you can understand it from many perspectives. It can be a number of companies in your portfolio that could be success. You have as many startups as possible. It can be just one big one that outperformed, and that's it. It can be things a bit more personal, etc. After, I think each journey is very different. We learn you different things, once again, as an investor. And I think what I like as well myself is being an entrepreneur as well myself. I learn a lot from all these other founders, being on the other side on the table. Of course, there is, I think, a kind of a bipolar thing in there. liking to be on both sides of the table, but you learn a lot from both sides. As an entrepreneur, I know what I'm looking for when looking for investor, and vice versa. So after, I could focus on a few stories, but many very interesting stories. Once again, depending on the area, the sector, the founders, the problem they're solving, etc., etc.
Thank you so much, Axel. So Nick, I've been in contact with you for the past 2 years, and I also know that you have quite an exciting portfolio. And can you share with us? I know it's way too early to tell, but what company have you invested into that you're very much?
All right. Sorry, guys. I'm going to see the best way we can enjoy this is if we can hear everything. Fadilah, it seems that there's something a little bit off with your mic, just with static. I don't know if we can fix it so that the listeners and the guests can hear your questions. Maybe you can unmute and we just confirm for now.
All right.
Maybe
is this better? Is this better?
Not yet. Maybe just
what about now? Is it better now?
Yes.
Yeah, much better.
All right.
Oh, okay. Wonderful.
You.
Yeah.
Great.
I do
apologize. I got the question, so I can jump in on that one.
Okay, that's.
So I think you said most exciting. I will never say favorite, obviously, because I love all the entrepreneurs that I work with. But most exciting right now, I think, just based on what's happening recently, is Fingo, which is a first neobank in East Africa, or certainly in Kenya, just launched with the help of the president. And so I think there's not too many startups that have the president there to kick things off. A real tight partnership with EcoBank that could see them, scaling to 35 countries. So from an excitement point, I mean, I think they're very exciting. They're at early stage in that journey but I think bringing a service that's really needed in the market. If you look at how, in some ways painful the banking experience is, of how long does it take you to open an account? How many fees are you charged just for giving the bank your money? How long does it take transactions to close, etc. I think that market is ripe for disruption. So Fingo, I'm super excited about the product that they're bringing. I've been a beta tester for many months now, and I think they've developed something really interesting. So that's quite exciting right now.
and I'll add a bit on that as well to give you an example. Following Nick's choice, I think you did a good choice, by the way, with Fingo. I've seen their pitch deck a year ago and recently as well, etc. So I think they're on something that can be definitely amazing and solving a lot of problems, obviously, and on the fintech space as well, and to stay in the same sector. But on the other side on the western side of Africa and the francophone-speaking side, Julaya as well. I've been an angel investor for some time. It's more trying to provide financial services for businesses that basically the banks are not really providing. So just to give you an example, I'm an entrepreneur as well myself in Côte d'Ivoire. I have a bank account like everyone. When you have a business with a traditional bank, and basically the tools they give you to pay suppliers, to pay the employees, etc., are very, very, very old school. I won't name the banks, you know them, most of them. By the way, EcoBank seems to be quite the most agile and dynamic one, so I need to probably switch to them, but that's another topic. And Julaya is giving you tools to better manage your spendings, expenses, etc., etc. Also creating MasterCard debit cards on the go for your employees that you can cap and stuff like that. So as an entrepreneur, I'm using it every day. So that could be something obviously interesting, being an investor at the same time. So same space, probably maybe some synergies they can have together down the line, but we'll see.
Very exciting story to hear from you, Alex and Nick. So what we want to know, I still kind of can go back to Nick and say, well, I've seen how much we have grown over the past 2 years. So, but what I want to know from Alex is, how fast has your portfolio grown, right? And to all the people listening to us today, what would you say is the best approach for angels, and the way also you support startup beyond capital investment?
Yes, that's it at the end. So as an angel investor, I guess it's all about being an angel investor, budget. If you're in a network like what Nick is doing with a network of angel investor, after depending on how they invest, you have basically different levels. Either you invest yourself, so either you will invest very early stage, small tickets, a bit later stage but bigger tickets, but on your own. You're alone. The pro there is that you're on your own. Basically, the cons there is that you're alone, so you don't know what you're doing, you don't know who you have in front, etc. What I would recommend definitely to angel investors when they start, what I should have done at the beginning, but is to go through angel networks. Exactly what Nick is doing in Nairobi, because there's a community's feeling. If your neighbor on the left and on the right, they are investing in a business, maybe that could be a good one. So there is this trust factor, transparency, etc. So and then you invest through what is called SPVs, single purpose vehicles. So basically, everyone is investing in one kind of a shell entity, mostly based in the US or in Europe or in Asia sometimes. And this entity is investing in that startup, this check of 100, 150, 200, or even more $1,000. And you are 2,000, 1,000, 5,000, whatever dollars in that bigger check. And I think that's the best approach. So the best advice I would give definitely is invest in groups, as an angel investor. You will save a lot of time and definitely a lot of money. And as an angel investor yourself, you have a budget, maybe per year over the next 5 years to allocate. It takes time, and you won't catch gold at the first startup you invest on. So you have 50K, 20K, cut into smaller pieces and invest in, mitigate the risk. I think that's the best. And not only about the risk, but also stories. Once again, what I really like is I know now that I can meet entrepreneurs I've invested in Kenya, in Nigeria, in Côte d'Ivoire. So when I'm traveling, I'm always busy, meeting a lot of people, and that's what I feel is on top of the rest. Very, very nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. So Alex, Nick, I would like to come to you, but this time around, I understand that for anybody listening to us today who currently runs an angel network, we know that, of course, one of the biggest advantages is that you're able to mitigate the risk by pulling together investment from individuals, but you're also able to kind of source for skills that could best support the startup across the whole functional area. But what I want to ask you is, Nick, how do you keep engaging your group members? How do you keep them motivated? How do you make sure that they're constantly supporting and contributing to the portfolio company that you come and share with the group? How do you keep them going and moving?
Yeah, it's a good question. A good example, right before this call, there were 10 of us that had invested in a startup called Mosmos. And I think just having regular touch points, because everybody wants to help, but also everybody is busy. And so if you get busy with your daily life or your full-time job, it's easy to forget or just not be as engaged. And so we have regular follow-up calls so that we know how do we best support these startups. And to your point, it's great because we all kind of come with different backgrounds. So there might be somebody in the group that has a strong financial background that might talk to them about treasuries, support strategy. There might be somebody who's a strong technical founder who can, go into the code with them and work on bugs that they're having. There might be, growth hackers, etc. So I think that's one of the things that I've really enjoyed about investing as part of a group, because both when I'm looking at the deals, I get to see all those different opinions that I wouldn't have myself because I'm not a technical guy. But then on the other side, hopefully we can create some of our own success because we all bring our 10 or 20, all of us have our own networks, our own skill sets. And if we can put those behind the founder, we can create some of our own success.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that with us, Nick, today. So, you pretty much have been entering this ecosystem for the past, well, say probably between 5 to 10 years, right? You've been within the ecosystem, you've been working. But in terms of angel investing, it's probably between less than 5 years. So what I want to hear from you is how have you seen the investment landscape change over the past decade? And how has ACES adapted to these changes over time? I can start with you, Axel.
Yeah, so I've been doing that for about 10 years. So 10 years ago, I can tell you, especially in angel investing in Africa, it was very different. And once again, not all those angel network like the one in Nairobi with Nick, not all these platforms as well. Now you have a lot of platforms where you can have a lot of news. You have also, probably these guys from Daba Finance as well. They have their app with news and memos on startups, etc. So the landscape is much safer, trustworthy, transparent. Now you have more as well. All the startups, don't forget that when you invest in a startup in Africa, Africa is the location for operations, but at the end of the day, you're not most of the time not investing in a startup directly in Côte d'Ivoire, in Kenya, etc., but in a holding entity that is based in the US, in Europe, or in Asia, and then the operating entity is in this country. So the risk is very mitigated. And this, once again, has changed a lot. When I did my first investment in a startup, because there was technology involved in 10 years ago, it was in Congo, Kinshasa, and the company was only in Congo, Kinshasa. So that was quite different. And to be fair, to be honest, a bit more unsafe. So yeah, I think it's definitely good timing. The numbers are still fairly low. Now there's a dip a bit everywhere around the world as well. So I think, yeah, it's definitely a good timing. Once again, always with this advice, yeah, document yourself, all these platforms I talked about, those communities, those groups, and act in groups, yeah, definitely.
What about you, Nick?
Yeah, just to follow on some of Axel's points. I mean, I think the fact that you can jump on Stripe Atlas and have your Delaware entity registered in a day or two, changes the game for a lot of founders and also for investors. Like Axel was saying, it might feel a little more regulated and safe in that space. I think it's really exciting to see more local investors because I think it's great to have a mixture of. I mean, I'm a foreign investor here. But people who have grown up in the ecosystem and have that network that they can quickly open up their Rolodex and get you connected to any corporate that you need to, et cetera. I think there's a lot of value in having local investors. So that's one thing that I've been particularly excited about with NIBAN, to have so many Kenyan investors investing in Kenyan startups. And I think 5-10 years ago you weren't seeing as much of that. I think it was happening, but not as publicly and maybe not in the same numbers. And then, if you look at the Nigeria's story, where you're seeing some exited founders or early investors who are now coming back around and investing in the next round of startups, and you sort of get that flywheel turning. I think that's just, I'm jealous of that. I'm looking forward to the exits starting to come in Kenya, to start to see that thing turn as well, because that just really makes things move so much faster. And then great investors, if you've been a founder that got exited, what better investor to have on your cap table than somebody that has gone down that path before you.
Right.
At the end, just to add on what Nick said, but investing or angel investing in Africa is no different from angel investing in back in Europe or in the US a few years ago. So that's it. The landscape is maturing. The entrepreneurs are getting more, once again, it's just natural process, more serious entrepreneurs, the businesses as well, the markets as well, the processes as well. So it's safer for everyone. So more angel investors are getting in, more money is getting in, and then that this flywheel effect once again, and things are accelerating. And it's all for the good, obviously, of solving problems for the local customers and populations, etc., and creating value.
Right, great. And when you're talking about it being a natural kind of process, it's almost as if it disregards the work that people like yourself have done within the ecosystem. And we can, if we go back 10 years ago, the startup could only attract less than 100 million on the continent. And just in 2021, 2022, you could see that number has grown to billions, right? We're talking about between $450 to $5 billion that startups were able to attract into the continent. And what I wanted to know is, what role do you think angel investors have played in creating that confidence?
They're the first one, I guess, to take the risks. So, angel investors will come first. First, a bit of love money, friends and family and fools. Some are luckier than others, that's it. But, and then angel investors, and then some angel investors are making a bit more money, or they're getting a bit more sophisticated, and kind of funds. And funds can start pretty small in check size as well, and then they grow. That's it, I guess. That's what maybe Nick can comment on, but starting with SPVs, and then you build a fund, and with that fund you invest more, and it grows. So angel investors are at the beginning, but they continue to be there as well over time, of course, to support especially startups in the early stages of their journeys. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Nick, would you like to add?
Yeah, just to echo on that, I think one thing that we've noticed is, as NIBAN, we're not writing the big checks, right? That most of our investors are in their 30s. They're excited about it, but they don't have, they can't write a $50,000 check personally. They might write a $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 check. But I think one thing that we've noticed, and to what Axel said, is I think sometimes the signal is more important than the amount of capital, because we still see the big checks, the big funds out there are still outside the continent. Hopefully that changes with time. But I think we're starting to see, if we write a $50,000 check, that it makes it easier for those bigger funds to come in, because they know there's local capital, local connections happening, especially if they don't really know the local context as well. To see local money going in, I think really is a strong signal. And so, yeah, I think that's a lot of what our role is take that first risk, add value, and be that signal.
And don't forget as well that in all these big stories that we see, have this cap table from Uber at the beginning of their journey. Basically, there were a lot of $5,000 checks back then in the US. So you would think like big market, wealthy people, whatever. The amount of guys that put $5,000 checks at the beginning of Uber, I think it was 2008 or something like that, was quite significant, and all of that amounted for maybe 100K or something, and boom, that's how they started. So, and these guys have been quite, I guess, happy / lucky to be there with that small check at the beginning. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Let me add one comment on that. I think we do need to break down this idea that you have to be super high net worth to be an angel investor, and it's just simply not true. Like I said, most people in the group are writing $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 checks, and it's very meaningful, as we've seen in some of these examples. So
that's very powerful, Nick, and that's exactly what angel investing is. Really, it's like putting multiple individuals together that can actually put capital, a very small amount, but when put together, it becomes significant. And on top of that, with the mentorship that they will provide to the startup will be invaluable, in making sure that the startup can actually build a traction that would be attracted to the VC firms or other funders that will come after. And what I want to know, I know that, Nick, you're based in Kenya. and your investors are very much located across the globe. And being based in Kenya, you're very versed with what is happening in the Kenyan startup ecosystem. Are you interested in also investing? Have you invested in startup located outside of Kenya? And if you have, can you walk us through the process of investing into that company?
Yeah, I've done a couple outside of Kenya, but mostly has been in Kenya because that's, 85% of the members in our group are based in Kenya. So I think it's where we add the most value. It's where we have, the strongest networks and the strongest knowledge. I think when I look at, we're looking at a South African deal right now, and part of the, I want to say hold up, but part of my question mark is, I'm not based there. I don't know the economy as well. And so, we're reaching out to some South African angels to see, I'd love to hear their opinion on it and gain from their expertise in that area. And I think if some of those boxes get checked, then yeah, maybe we invest alongside of them, and maybe we can help the startup come to Kenya when they're ready. But I think just that local knowledge is always, if I don't have it, I'm a little uncomfortable writing the check just because I don't know what I don't know.
Yeah, and well, I was hoping that you would leverage on ABAN's angel network to facilitate that whole process.
Yeah, we're talking to Josie Angels right now, so members talking to members.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. What about you, Axel? I know also that your exposure is across the continent. How do you do it?
I guess after in there's a bit of my like of travel and in there. So obviously, when you invest in African startups, I guess easily you get in front of deals in Kenya, Nigeria, maybe bits of South Africa, Egypt, the big four. And then, I'm really keen to see more deals from smaller markets, because definitely Ivory Coast, that I know quite well, for example, has been underexposed in that sense. They attracted just a few tens of millions. But this market is, for example, in all of sub-Saharan Africa, in 45 countries there, Ivory Coast is the biggest seller of new cars. More than Nigeria, more than Kenya, 3 times more than Nigeria, 3 times more than Kenya, etc. So for a market that is only 30 million people, so it's fairly advanced in a lot of ways. Each market has its, once again, pros and cons, etc. So I think these times right now, where the funding is a bit more difficult to access, it will as well push a bit more these smaller markets, thinking about Zambia, about Namibia, about obviously Côte d'Ivoire, Benin, Togo, Senegal, Uganda next to where Nicky is, etc. So Tanzania. So and I think it's good. There's always a good in those. More difficult times. It will show a bit more diverse deals, I would say. Yeah.
All right. Okay, that's wonderful. So there's something that I would like to hear from your experience, right? Well, can you tell us a little bit about some of the challenges you have faced as angel investors and how you have overcome them? I'll start with you, Nick.
Doing SPVs at a small ticket size is a huge pain, and often doesn't make real financial sense. So that's one of the things that's a bit challenging. I'd love to see a product like a SPV platform that actually works for the African market. That's at a high level from sort of an angel group. I think on individual level, it's always interesting looking at the due diligence process and what you can or can't get in that process. And I think it's fraught on both sides, right? I think it's tempting to overanalyze and want to look too deep, and you can't do that. It's not good for the founder, etc. But then, if you don't have that personal relationship or have a longer standing relationship with that founder, it's tough to try to find that happy medium of knowing enough that you're ready to take a bet on that founder, and not just, it's an AI idea, so let me throw some money at it. Like, no, it really is, again, going to be the founder. It's not what's hot. So it's finding that balance of, the right amount of knowledge. And again, that's where I think the network can help, because, I have a lot of perspectives from potential co-investors. So that's helped me with a little bit with that DD process, but it's never easy, and you're never going to get it right all of the time.
Right. Right. What about you, Axel?
Yeah, I definitely agree with the SPV process. Sometimes does not make sense from a financial perspective. These guys, once again, I don't have any interest in them, but these guys from DABA, I think, are quite interesting because they're trying to build this kind of angel list for African startup where you can invest as low as $500 or $250 as an angel investor, and they take care of the whole SPV creation process. So have a look. But then on the other side, the due diligence. Yes, due diligence, as I said, I've been in lots of due diligences from a founder perspective myself, or being an investor. It's easier to be on the investor side on that one, I would say sometimes. But it can go from only looking at if the company is registered officially to have a full audit report from the best KPMG, Bain, or whatever, guys. At the end of the day, it's always about, as well, gut feelings, people, once again. And that's it, Sometimes you may bet, and bet is a good and bad word at the same time, but on not the best idea at all, but the best guys. And that will make the difference because they will make. I have a few, obviously, startups I've invested with that failed. The ones I don't like are the guys that are not very transparent and that don't accept failure. This, I think, is a problem of ego and stuff like that. I've had that recently. I really didn't like it. And some other guys, they failed, but they said, yes, we still have money left and we are trying something else, etc. You may agree or not agree with the new idea, but at least they're trying. And this I like because at the end of the day, you're taking a risk, of course, but yeah, you want the founders to find ways to do something. And pivot is always sometimes a kind of key to potentially something good. Yeah.
Right. So we have a question from Emmanuel, and Emmanuel is asking this question: what is it that a startup should have to receive funding? The business environment is really difficult to get started. The cost of starting a business is very high. Emmanuel, can you please state where you are based on the continent? In the meantime, Nick, I would like you to, if you don't mind, please respond to Emmanuel.
Sure. It's a legitimate question. It is tough to start. I mean, for those of us that have been down that path, I think the quick and short answer is a customer. Have somebody who's willing to pay for the thing, the service, the widget that you're providing, and it's solving a problem for them. I think there's a lot of value in sort of hustling to get that first 10 customers or 100 customers. I don't like it when people come with pitch decks with huge ideas and they're not telling me which customers or potential customers they've talked to. I mean, that's because I've also made this mistake of thinking I had a great idea and ready to take it to the market, and I didn't spend enough time with those customers, and it was a failure, right? So show me the 10 or the 100 customers that you've talked to, even if you're not able to service them right now because you need to build something or import something. But yeah, have those conversations and have that evidence ready, because that's number one for me.
Yeah, I think that's it. At some point, put yourself on the other side shoes. Like if you're an entrepreneur, okay, think about, okay, I have money, I want to invest in a business. What does I want this business to show me? Of course, a bit of traction. I'm helping an entrepreneur out of Zambia. That's exactly what he did. He's trying things, and yes, cost of starting a business is high, but a lot of things will cost some money, and after you need, especially when you raise money that is not your money, that is dedicated for growing a business, etc. You need to accept that, and you always need to find ways to make this cost lower, but still keeping the quality, etc. So it's just the beginning, and in a lot of countries, I have been very surprised, especially in Africa. It's not that high to start businesses. I don't know exactly in Kenya, but in Rwanda, it's pretty cheap. In Côte d'Ivoire, it was pretty cheap. In Zambia, it's pretty cheap. So, and sometimes faster than in old European markets. So I think, yes, try to get as much as possible, as quick as possible, kind of proof of concept launch quickly. Don't procrastinate too much on useless stuff like colors and stuff like that at the beginning, at least. And try to get revenue from somewhere to solve a problem, and then keep on going. Yeah.
And there's a follow-on question from Veronique, and she say one of the difficulty to access is to access data and to make an informed decision. What do you recommend to overcome this challenge?
I assume this is as an investor. I think you have to come to terms with the fact that you're never going to have all the information, and just accept that, and obviously accept the risk. Don't take too big of a risk. I mean, I think that was actually when you were talking about advice for investors, is like, I think sometimes people get so excited and make a big bet on the first one and waste half their budget on that. Not waste, but I think understand that there's those risks, understand what information you can gather, and then take an educated guess, because that's all these are. And we know that 50+% of them are going to fail, and you have to be okay with that as well.
Right.
And once again, I guess invest in groups, invest with communities. I think definitely that's one of the best thing and the best advice. You won't be alone, and you will ask questions to others. You will speak with the founders, the teams. Less prone for mistakes and issues and overreactions as a very young investor. Yeah.
Right. And Nick, I would like to please for you guys, both you, Nick and Axel, to share with the audience this evening on the difference between a startup and an SME. So I would like to elaborate a little bit more. Is a startup necessarily a company that is starting, or is a startup has a specific characteristic that attracts angel investors like yourself?
Axel, do you want to take that one first? Do you want me to?
I would say so. When I relocated, for example, in Australia 10 years ago, I built a business there, and Australian authorities they classified this business as a startup because it's a new business. I could have launched a flower physical gift shop or fintech or whatever would be a startup for them. So that's their point of view. I think in my point of view, the difference between a startup and a SMB, either they are both the same, but for me, startup, I really had this tech component in there. How you can solve a problem that at some point involves a bit of tech. It doesn't mean to be very complicated, etc., but that involves tech. That's it for me. And as a startup at the beginning, you're an SMB, a small and medium business. You're in that category. And later on, when that startup will become what they call a scale-up, then you become a medium or a bigger business. That's it.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the only thing I would add is just that potential for exponential growth is typically, the thing that characterizes a startup versus an SME. And unfortunately, I feel like for the founders out there, I think there's a temptation to everybody to try to be a startup. And in some ways I understand, because that's typically where the funding is, but most businesses are not startups, and they shouldn't try to be. I've started some very good businesses that are, they're still SMEs and they make money, and that's fantastic. So I think there's also that risk of trying to make everything a startup when it just isn't good for the founders nor the business.
Yeah. For you angel investors today, Nick and Axel, and for other angel investors listening to us today, and other ecosystem players such as startup founders, policymakers, and capacity builders, we can all agree that the whole ecosystem, the African startup ecosystem, has grown over the past 10 years for those who have been involved. And even for the past 5 years, we have seen tremendous movement in a positive manner. What I want to ask you, Nick and Axel, what are your thoughts about the potential for 10x early stage investment on the continent?
I would say, yeah, tricky question. I hope you'll have the same answer. But I would say there are many 10x. The problem is not that much the 10x in valuation. Is also the 10x if you want to exit. At some point, it's not only about making money, but it's also about doing 10x on one because you lost on 3 other ones, etc. And you make a bit more money, and that bit more money, because you've been already investing in the ecosystem, you'll reinvest in the ecosystem or give back to the community. I really like that approach.
Thank you, Axel.
Yeah, just
using Axel. Nick, can you please jump in?
Yeah, just to add on to that, I think, and maybe this is just to encourage more angel investing, but I think you have to go fairly early to find those 10x or those outsized returns, because I don't think we're going to see a lot of IPOs in the near future. I think it will come with time, but I think more likely your exits are secondary exits to VCs or PE firms, or mergers and acquisitions, which I think is the most likely outcomes for exits for early stage angel investors. And I think if you wait, well, one, if you're writing a small check, you're just not going to get into the deal once it's had some success and has more traction. But I think also if you want those outsized returns, I do think you have to make those very early bets because I don't think necessarily, I don't think we're going to see lots of unicorns exiting anytime super soon, and that's fine. I think we look for unicorns too much, and we sort of prize that term. What does it even mean? I think you can get a 10x or a 100x, and the business is nowhere close to a unicorn. So I think maybe sometimes that's a bit of a distraction. But my advice is go in early.
Well, now we have a last question from Kenya. We now have a business ideas that are non-traditional, like website offering services, information services to attract brands that have great potential. How do investors go about investing in such businesses, and what are the needs from the entrepreneurs? What do they need from the entrepreneurs?
I'll go back to the, show customers, show demand, show that it's solving a problem. If you do that, then you can, it's still hard to attract investors, and we all know that it's a just challenging climate right now. But yeah, to my earlier answer, just show that people are willing to pay for this and it really solves a problem for them, and then you'll get attention from investors.
Okay, that's amazing. Everyone, thank you all for joining us this evening. Thank you very much, Axel. Thank you very much, Nick, for joining this session and sharing your experience with the audience today. We're very happy, and we are more than proud of your contribution to the African startup ecosystem. And we will continue to work with you. We'll continue to encourage what you do, and we're really looking forward to a fruitful kind of result from the work that you have been doing for the past few years on the continent. I will just now hand over to Horatio. And Horatio, are you with us? Okay. She's coming on now.
Hello, everyone. Once again, thank you for attending this session. So in the pipeline, we have 2 sessions coming up for the 1st of June and the 15th of June. One focuses on early stage investments in healthcare in Africa, and the other focusing on breaking into Francophone Africa. How do we 10x the potential of Francophone Africa? So stay tuned. We'll be keeping you up with all information for our upcoming sessions. We send out mailers, newsletters, and you can follow us on our social media pages highlighted below. Once again, thank you for attending this session, and do have a great evening.
Thank you very much, Jeffrey. Have a wonderful evening.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks to ABAN for putting this on. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.